just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other. Samantha Morris is a woman on a mission to empower women and inspire them to become entrepreneurs, business leaders, and successful business owners in their own right. As a mother of 5, Samantha challenged the negativity that surrounded her when she decided to study for her bachelor's degree in business while raising her family and running her own business. She then decided to start her own business as a business coach for women after helping business owners she knew who were looking for help growing their businesses, and after seeing a pattern of women who wanted more for themselves and just needed a little help to get it. Samantha shares her story, and we dive deeper into some of the concepts that have made her successful today. Please enjoy this week's episode of Truth Seekers with Samantha Morris. All right, welcome to another episode of Truth Seekers. We have Samantha Morris joining us today. Samantha, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. There's a lot of depth in our pre-conversation notes here about your journey and your path and what you're up to today. Maybe we could start there. Just tell us about what you're working on and why that is a passion of yours, why it makes you tick.
Yeah, absolutely. So my business that I have at the moment is I'm a business coach and I work exclusively with women. And the reason that I'm working just with women is because I feel like traditional business models are really focused on male energy and the way men present themselves in the world. And there is a place for the female energy and the feminine. And I want to try and help women bring that to the forefront of the way we do business, because hasn't the last 2 years seen a dramatic shift in how we've all got to operate? Mm-hmm. And I think there's a really big place for what women can bring to the table now.
Very interesting. And I know you have a business partner, is that right?
I do. So I've actually got 2 businesses because, one's no fun. Why not have 2? So I actually have another business which I operate with my husband. And we've had that business for 16 years. So it's an interesting dynamic working with your husband. And just to add a little bit more of complexity to the layer, we actually used to own that business with his parents.
Oh, wow.
So, and that went back to before we were even married. So I was very new to the scene. We were 3 months into our relationship when we started that business. And yeah, so that was a very quick, baptism of fire to spending a lot of time with my new family.
Well, I hope it's a testament that you're still together after 16 years. That must be going pretty well.
Yes, business and marriage, both intact. But it's interesting how the dynamics of our personalities and the dynamics of what we each want to achieve plays into both things. And it can be a really big challenge sometimes to keep that line of separation between business and personal. And I think I'm pretty good at doing that. I was in the Navy for 12 years. And, in the services, we tend to live, we eat, we work, we do everything all together. So you've got to learn to have that line between when you're on and you're working and you're performing what, the function that you're supposed to perform. You've got to be a certain way with people because, there's a hierarchy there and it's necessary for what you're doing. But you've got to be a little bit of a different person. You've got to drop your guard a bit when you're socializing because there's a human side to what you're doing as well. So I feel like I developed that skill really well when I was in the Navy. And so I feel I can, switch hats quite easily between this is my business mode and, let's be strict about business and then let's put that aside. Now we're home and now now we're in a personal relationship. And it's interesting, my husband just blends the two together. So I don't feel like he has that line drawn quite as well as I do.
This is interesting to me because so often in my coaching practice, and wonder what your thoughts would be on this, is that I coach people to be their genuine self, their authentic self. And not that I think you're saying something else there with like wearing different hats and having to be different people, because I know what you mean. There's different roles that you have to play depending on, you know, who you're speaking with or the groups that you're in. But I also think there's an opportunity, like you said, it can be challenging, but oftentimes it's just like a balance. So maybe your balance is out of, or we can balance each other, especially when you have a business partner, especially when the lines can be blended with professional and personal. So is there a silver lining there? Like, where's the good part of that challenge, if you will?
Yeah, there is a silver lining. I feel like I'm pretty aware of who I am and my personality. And that's taken a lot of years and a lot of work to be able to see myself, you know, the good and the bad. And I know that I can be, I always describe myself as I'm the hot air balloon. So I'm always trying to fly off in all different directions, whichever the wind takes me, because I love having these big ideas. My husband is the stake in the ground that's tethering me and not controlling me, but just keeping me a little bit grounded sometimes with the things that I've got to do. And I feel like I do the opposite for him, where I try and sort of pull him up a little bit. So I feel like we're very much, you know, a yin and yang.
Well, I love that hot air balloon reference. And then it's like, it makes so much sense with the groundedness, right? Because you can see it visually too. Like you going off into the air, and then he's grounding you. So yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at, is that usually there's something that's good about that. Now, it doesn't mean everything is good, but that's certainly, like, you look for the opportunity in whatever challenge that you have. And I think that's like you guys probably find the middle ground with your ideas or with the direction of your business. How is that resulted? How is that materialized? What is that? Is it like I don't know, like the strategy of the business or the type of client that you guys work with? Like, where does that show up for you?
Well, the business that we have together is actually very, very specialized. And, you know, we're not operating a business that, you know, there's one on every street corner. There is only, in the whole state of Victoria that we live in, there are only 3 operators that do what we do. So we don't have the traditional business constraints of, you know, a lot of competition and competing in a huge marketplace. It is quite exclusive. So I feel like we're really lucky in that respect. And the other thing that I really like about it is that the other companies that operate in this industry, you know, we all sort of share things. Not too much, you know, there is still that competitive edge there, but you know, we know which business has which strengths. And so sometimes it's like you're better off to go with actually the other, you know, the competition. But the strategy behind our business and where I'm the hot air balloon is I see massive opportunity for growth because there are so few of us doing this. And I see opportunity to expand. And whereas my husband's saying, okay, slow down. Let's just think about this and how's it going to work. So he does force me to be really methodical and to do research and think through ideas a lot more fully before I jump in and try and execute. Yeah,
that's it's related to our useful little tool, the mind scan. We call it relator, doer, thinker, right? So he's definitely living more in that thinker than the doer. But usually what happens is, if especially if he has a partner like you, when he does get to that doer mode, there's no question, like, you guys have already thought about it, and like it's just so clear. You're just going once that decision is made. Do you find that to be true?
Yes, yeah. It's just getting to the point where, you know, we're actually going to jump in. That's the hard work for me. And as soon as we're able to go, you know, like I'm the galloping horse out the gate and I'm ready to run. But see, that part of me is what makes business coaching so exciting, because I just find that women tend to They think they've got this dream, but we're all capable of so much. Every person on the planet capable of so much. And I love to help people extend their thinking. I feel like imagination seems to be gated, and it seems to be drowned, even when kids are in school. Be creative. That's all good and well in primary school, but let's move you into high school. Now you've got to start to memorize everything. And don't get creative. Don't go outside the lines. Don't think, just remember. Then if you go on to tertiary education and go to university or college, kids get lost because they don't know how to think creatively anymore. And all of a sudden they're expected to challenge and, think about concepts in a different way. And so we lose that. So the work that I love doing is sitting down with someone and saying, okay, what are your thoughts right now? Now let's blow them up. Let's see what sort of potential you can see in yourself. Yeah. That's my favorite thing to do.
Oh, I love it. I'm so on the same page with you with we have no idea what we're capable of. And not to draw it back into a bow, but I will, that the relator, doer, thinker of the mind skin, that's the people of the mind skin. And that's mathematically the highest rated, or the mathematically most valuable, because we can't even calculate what we're capable of. We're constantly solving new problems that we've never seen before. We're collaborating with people we've never met before. And we're producing and creating these things that, I would say 50 years ago would shock people, but I would say 10 years ago, people would be like, what? Like we're living in the future right now, and it's happening faster than ever before.
Definitely. I'm curious about this question that I want to ask you. How often when you're coaching, how often do you meet people that already know that, that they're destined for really, really big things and they've got massive plans? Like, do you find those people very often?
That's a great question. And that might be a truth seekers first to ask the host the questions. I appreciate that. But I would love to share that, because I always say, the clients I'm looking to work with, I want them to be hungry and humble. So with that encompasses two things: hungry enough to want, have the desire to grow and know that there's more out there, and then humble enough to recognize that regardless of how much people have or see, or how good they are or how proficient they are, there's always more. Everybody should have a coach. There's nobody that makes things like, I don't need a coach anymore. We see things through our own lenses, and there's no escaping that. Now that's a good thing, because we bring our own uniqueness to the world, but we cannot escape that. That's also our limiter. And to have somebody else along our side to be able to point that out and to expand that for even the highest producers, the top producers. It's not like they can't produce more. And more doesn't have to be more money, more sales calls, more business, more clients. It could be more time, more peace, more of whatever is out of balance for them. So to answer your question, I look for people who understand that concept, but know that there's more for them.
Brilliant. I love it. Yeah. We work with a balance wheel. I love that you mentioned balance, because it isn't, I feel like people step into a conversation with a business coach where they think, oh, a business coach just helps you make more money. They help you figure out your business and how to make more money. And I feel like that's a bit of a misconception, because so much of the work that we do is, like you say, on the mindset of the business owner, because you've got to get that right first. You've got to figure out all your stuff first.
Yes. And to that point, there's always more. There's always another level to go to. That's a beautiful thing. That's the pushing of the limits of humans' capabilities.
Yes.
Something you said earlier was really interesting to me about the education system, how we're kind of indoctrinated to just follow rules. And I think of your background, right, in the Navy. Like, is that not like a lot of, not order taking, but yes, order taking, like it's following rules and having structure, procedure. For you to have the awareness that you have right now sitting in this conversation, there had to be some sort of turning point or like aha moment. What was that for you?
Yeah, so when I reflected on my time in the military after I'd left, I figured out that what I developed really well, or what that environment developed in me really well, was the ability to be creative inside of a box. because yes, the military is very structured and we do have rules to follow. But the first thing about that is understanding why they're in place. And that all rules are supposed to be safeguards. They're supposed to protect us, and they're supposed to protect the people that are sitting on the outside of what we're doing. So they have a purpose. And once you understand that, then it's about figuring out, okay, how do I operate within this so that I maintain the integrity of those rules, but still bring in what I need to bring. So I kind of feel like that's what I got from my time in the service. So it was always about thinking and saying, okay, I've got to follow these rules, but I've got to achieve this end goal. How do I work? I don't like to use the word manipulate because it's not manipulating the rules, but navigate's a better word. How do I navigate this so that I can achieve at the end of it? And that just suited me really well. I loved the constant challenge of that. You've got to achieve this. These are the parameters you've got. Now figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like, yeah. So I feel like even though you've got all those rules in place that you have to follow, there is so much scope for imagination and creativity inside of that. And I don't think people understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It might be different for the services in the US. And all I know about that really is what we see on television, and it is extremely regimented. But from my experience inside of that, no, there is scope to bring what you are good at into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a give and take. We like to say structure for freedom's sake. Like the rules are there for you to be able to play, but there has to be some rules, right? You can't have no rules.
No, because like I say, you're losing safety and things like that when you have no rules whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's like sport, isn't it? Every sport has rules, but the best players figure out how to use those rules to their advantage.
That's a great analogy. Absolutely. So what happened after the Navy? I'm curious, Samantha. Tell me that story.
Oh, after the Navy. I hit a bit of a brick wall when I discharged for the Navy. I feel like it was a very quick decision that happened for me to leave. And it was the right decision to make at the time. But there was a lot of stuff going on around that decision. And that military service was me in my 20s. So it was me learning who I was as an adult. But part of that was, I tied who I was to what I did.
Mm.
And I think that, anybody that's had any kind of career, that's naturally what we do. When people say to you, who are you? You answer with what you do, not who you are. So when you lose, not lose that career, but when you change direction and you don't have that career anymore, you've got to figure out how to answer that question. And so I found myself sitting there saying, who am I? And I didn't know how to answer that for myself in a way that felt good. I had 3 children at that stage, and, and it wasn't that I adore my children, but I felt like I was a lot more than a mum. There was so many more parts to me and so many more capabilities. So I was like, I'm not cut out to sit at home. I'm not cut out for that life. And, my mum was a stay-at-home mum, and I admired her so much. But I just had, itchy feet. I just wanted to go and do more and more. So I had to figure out what that was going to be. So I tried a few different businesses. I tried working for people. I struggled as an employee, which sounds kind of silly given that I had been in the military for 12 years. But I struggled with, going into the private sector. They didn't have the rules and frameworks in place. And I struggled to understand how they operated the way they did. I was like, this doesn't make sense the way you're doing this. There's a better way. But employers often, the employers I work for really didn't want to hear that from me. So I wasn't a very good employee, I'm afraid. So I did dabble in business and, tried a few different business models. I tried to I had 3 kids. So I was like, I'll try the party plan and a few different things like that. And I was a mortgage broker for a little while. But what I know now that I didn't know then was that to be successful at business, you have to know your why. You have to know why you're doing it, and you have to have that passion for it. Whereas I was just picking up a business in a box and saying, okay, I'm just going to do this and see how it goes. So that just didn't work. So I wish I'd known back then that really the business I needed to start was one that I was really passionate about.
Well, I also think maybe you had to go through that experience to know where you were belonging to, or know what felt right. Right? It's almost it's the itchy feet, right? If you were to stay a mother, it wouldn't have sat well with you. But same with these jobs. If you were to stay at these jobs, it wouldn't have sat well with you. There's no way you could have survived or thrived, and you wouldn't have known that until you were in that position. So that is something that I would want our listeners to hear. That sitting here today, you know, we talk about those years in just a couple of seconds, right? But there was a lot that went into that to come out the other side and to know, like, that's sometimes what success requires. I saw a line the other day, I think I've mentioned this before on a previous episode, 99% of success is failure.
Yeah.
So we see the end result. We see Samantha in a business right now that she likes, and she's working with her husband, and things are going great. What about the previous decade to that was quite a few, you know, failures or trials and errors and all this other tribulation that we don't see anymore. That's part of the journey. That's part of the success.
And I think too, I never actually saw myself as a failure. So I just I recognized that I was just not cut out for what I was doing. I never perceived it as I was failing at something. Maybe I didn't see it that way because I didn't care that much about it. So I didn't have an emotional attachment to any of it.
Yeah, and here's what I might offer. Say today you still don't have the coaching practice, but you still don't see yourself as a failure, even as you go through these other jobs. You're still searching for that success. It's only a failure when you stop, right? If you give up.
Exactly. Yes.
I spent X number of years looking and I just didn't find it. Well, then you have failed. But the more, as you keep looking, there's no way to fail that. That's what success is.
Yeah. And I often, you know, when people say to me, oh, you know, what's your story? And my initial reaction is, I don't have that, you know, that big grand story where this, you know, tragedy happened or I had some big overnight success that launched me into the stratosphere. I don't have that big pivotal thing. What I've got is these breadcrumbs along the way. And I think I'm sort of getting to the point now where I'm like, you know what, it's okay, because all of those little breadcrumbs just led me to where I am right now. So I didn't have to have that big, you know, that big life crushing thing happen. And I really feel those stories when people have them, you know. But that wasn't my story. My story was I was going over moguls. I was doing little things. I didn't have the mountain. I just had the moguls.
Yeah, that's so cool. So here might be something that we can wind down with. We're talking about stories. Stories usually refer to the past. What kind of story are we writing for the future? What are you working on now? What do you see yourself doing 2 years, 5 years from today?
Oh my gosh, I am ridiculously excited about next year. It's I was looking forward to 2021 because I thought, you know, we might have been stepping out a little bit more than we did, but you know, Melbourne was going for the record. You know, we went for it and just spent most of the year locked down. So, but I see that as a positive now. You know, now we're at the end of it. You know, always got to reflect and pull out what was good out of it. And it was a lot of time to think about how I was doing business and think about what I wanted the direction of my business to be. So now I've got all these ideas for 2022. So I've rolled out this 12-month program, which I'm really excited about because it's helping women to start a business. And, you know, and I've got clients that are established businesses, but I love the passion and excitement that comes from people that are just starting out. That really, really gets me going. So I'm excited to have that program on offer next year, but I've got not a book. It's not my book. I have written one chapter with some other amazing women, and that's being published next year. Awesome. So yeah, there's a few exciting things happening.
Oh, that's super cool. If we talk about authentic self, I can feel you just beaming as you talk about that. So that's super cool. I'm excited for you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So what we like to do when we do the takeaway, Samantha, just something you're taking away from today's conversation, or a piece of advice, or a good reflector, a good reminder of a principle that we hit on today. What's something that you're taking away from today's conversation?
Oh, taking away from today. We've got to remember that to look for balance. So the conversation, we spoke a bit about being in business with my husband. I've got to remember that when things don't always go the way I hope that they'll go, there's a reason for it, and it's bringing equilibrium back. So I've just got to look for that. So find balance in everything.
I love it. Yeah. Here's the way I see it. If we feel out of sorts with something, it just means we're desiring the opposite, just that the pendulum is on one side, we're just looking for the other. And usually if we feel that way, it's just a matter of time before it swings back in the other direction.
Yes. I love the pendulum, because I always think, when the pendulum's not swinging the way you want it to, all you've really got to do is write it out, because at some point that pendulum is going to swing with the same velocity in the total opposite direction.
Exactly. You're almost using its energy in the opposite direction to your advantage, because it's got to swing back. Absolutely.
Yes.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here, my takeaway today will be that path of success. And I think we talked on a grand scale of like business and doing what you love to do. But as a reminder for me, it's also the same with smaller stuff, and working out or riding a bike or a skill that you want to learn. We talked in a time scale of years, but it's the same. That's true over days or weeks or months for something smaller that we're trying to do. And we only fail when we give up. And as long as we keep seeking, it's just a matter of time. Like the failure gives us information to seek or to find what we're seeking. And that's inevitable as long as we keep looking. So that was a great reminder today for me. I really appreciate that, Samantha. Any last words, final words to bring us home here today?
Oh, final words. Yes. Is everything that you do doesn't have to be about this is going to be the one thing. Everything you do can be about understanding what it is that you don't want.
I like that too. That will be a fantastic note to leave off on. Samantha, thank you so much for joining Truth Seekers, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction, so please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.